Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled mother confiscated my house and demands I give it to my brother. She tries to get my wife deported from the country and wants to ruin my life. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the stories. I, 32 male, have been married to an amazing woman, 31 female, for a little over 3 years now. She is from Madagascar, I'm from South Africa, and that alone was reason enough for my mother to despise my lovely wife. I have cut off all ties with my mother a little under 2 years ago. First, some background information so you can understand with how much frustration and relief, because damn, it feels good to rant about all of this, I am writing this post. Me and my little brother, 30, have been brought up by our mom for almost the entirety of our lives. Our dad tried to raise us, but it took him only 4 years to realize that he was not cut out for fatherhood. I know this sounds harsh, but we are on good terms with him now, at least I am, because he was never really a jerk to me and was honest when I finally got to have some serious talk with him. The same could not be said about my mother. This might come off as me being ungrateful considering our mom did quite a lot for us. However, the thing is, she also never failed to voice just how much I owed my life to her. For starters, she did not agree with the woman I wanted to marry. Apparently, she had envisioned this grand wedding for me since I was in diapers with a nice white woman who could fit in with our society. And my choice of a Madagassi, aka woman from Madagascar woman, was a disrespect to her. Well, mind you, I was told all about this apparent plan after I brought my then girlfriend over for her first dinner with my mother. Anyways, we get married and my mother is still not happy and my wife has caught on to that. But as I said before, she is an amazing woman who did not let that get in between us. And I also tried to keep my mother and wife separate. That was until immigration police came knocking on our door. According to them, they received an anonymous call that said that my wife is an illegal immigrant and I am sheltering her. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that I knew right at that very moment who that anonymous caller was. But anyways, we eventually got it sorted when I showed them our marriage certificates and how she was now a South African citizen. It had not even been an hour since the police left when I get a call from my mother saying how she heard from my neighbors that police came to arrest my wife. Now, when I tell you the amount of breathing exercise I had to do to not outright shout at her, well anyways, I tell her that no, they had not come to arrest her and no, they had not arrested her. As I predicted, she sounds upset but suddenly throwing insults at my wife for tarnishing my reputation in the society before asking me to divorce her. And well, I immediately cut the call, both because I could not hear a word more against my wife and because I did not want to hear a word more from her. Of course, it does not stop there. She keeps suggesting that I divorce my wife for even the smallest of inconveniences, but I keep telling her that that's not how marriages work, and then she tells me that I know nothing about how to handle a marriage. Ironic, right? Anyways, about half a year passes like this, me and my wife are settled quite nicely despite my mom, and we are finally stable enough to afford a bigger and more spacious house. So we do our research, calculate our investments and finally sign the documents for it. And amidst all this, I completely forgot to tell my mom all about it. I am not even being sarcastic, the weeks leading up to that were so packed that it completely slipped my mind. But I thought I could make it all up to her by telling her the news in person at my brother's birthday party. This was a big mistake. Immediately she is glaring at me, and I think the only reason she was quiet was because her house was packed with guests. As soon as they leave, she is shouting at me for not consulting her, for giving the control of my life to my wife, etc. I'm more surprised at my own stupidity than at her anger. Eventually she cools down and takes a seat next to my brother, who is almost passed out with how much he drank that night. I thought she would finally congratulate me and we can move on from this unnecessary drama. And by the way, Ripe stars, at this point in time, if I would be OP, I would have cut ties with this woman, aka the mother, a long time ago. But anyways, big mistake number 2, she takes a breath, looks me in the eye and tells me I need to give that house to my brother. No, can you give your new house to your brother? Not that the question would not be just as bizarre, but at least it was a question. She simply asks me hand over the new house that both me and my wife invested in to my brother. Who, by the way, still lives with my mom. I know I should be jealous that he was clearly her favorite child, but with how he had turned out, I'm honestly glad she did not love me as much. Anyways, I tell her that I won't. I don't even bother reasoning with her because it wasn't like she was going to understand. She throws passive-aggressive comments on my wife until I get up and go for the door. That is when she really starts being ugly with her insults and I bang the door as I leave. Next week, I receive a letter from a lawyer that my house, the new one, has been confiscated by the immigration police. And yes, you read that right. My house was supposedly confiscated by the immigration police. And the lawyer in question who had written the said invitation coincidentally had the same name as one of my mother's friends. And by the way, Ripe Stars, at first I did not really understand this part of the story, so I had to ask OP what is really going on here. And what OP told me is that his mother actually asked one of her friends to pretend to be a lawyer and to pretty much intimidate OP and his wife by writing this stupid, outrageous letter. Anyway, now that we got that out of the way, I did not even bother showing my wife the letter. She was worried enough when I arrived home last week, all mad and disgruntled. I threw the letter in the trash can and picked up a fresh paper and a stamp. The next week, my mother received a letter that only had 3 words written on it. Get a life. I almost expected to receive another angry call, but when that never came, I decided to put it all behind me. Life continued easily like that, and after more than a year of marriage, we finally decided to have our honeymoon. The proper kind that will last a whole month. I don't even bother telling my mom about it because I honestly felt like it would be better if she did not know. The honeymoon is an absolute blast and I come home with the happiest of moods only to find sale signs in front of my house and random strangers inside along with my mother. The strangers look at me like I'm intruding, and when I loudly demand what is going on, they say they were here to tour the house with the real estate agent. That real estate agent being my mother. I yell and kick them all out that very second, but my mother refuses to leave. She calmly reveals that she had borrowed the backup keys of my house that I had foolishly given to her one day when she was complaining about me cutting her off, and was helping me find prospective buyers. In that moment, I knew I wanted absolutely nothing to do with my mother anymore, so I turn around, go outside to where my wife was, and call the police. I can hear my mom yelling at me from inside, but I don't care until after about 15 minutes. I see my wife's eyes widen and she is pulling me towards her. I turn around to see the sharp end of the knife that just narrowly missed my back before my mother is attacking me again. My heart is racing as I try my best to not let my mother hurt my wife, who's in turn trying to make sure that I'm not hurt. But suddenly my wife trips, and as I turn to catch her, I feel a numbing pain in my lower thigh. The sound of sirens came blaring after that, and I can hear my mother screaming as she is dragged away by the police. I dare not move an inch until paramedics are helping me on a stretcher and into the ambulance. Police takes my statement after the doctors are done stitching my wounds. They tell me that what my mother did classified as attempted murder, and since she did that in open where street cameras caught her, she would be in jail for at least 4 years. And that is the last time I heard of my mother. I did not even go meet her in jail when my brother messaged me. I knew there was no point in pretending to care for her when we both know what she did was unforgivable. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would say I would not call the OP spineless in this story. However, I think he should have been way stricter with his mom and cut off contact way earlier. If my mom would ever do any of the things that his mom did to him and his wife, I would instantly cut contact forever, probably. But either way, let's move on to the next story. This one is titled, "Neighbor threatened and tried to abuse my kids for insurance fraud and calls the police on me." I remember when I had left my ex and finally got my first apartment with my twin boys. I won't go into details, but my ex was pretty abusive and I had to save myself and my kids. Of course, I really wanted a house that I owned, but an apartment with just us 3 would do simply fine. After a few months, I was able to save up enough money to get a new car, and I was proud of myself. It was my first real brand new car and not some used car that had been sitting on the car lot for months. I was so excited, which meant that I was also extra careful. If we are being honest, I was already not known for being a great driver. Running over curbs was a regular thing to me, and so I really wanted to keep my new car damage-free. It's like when you get your first paycheck and buy something nice for yourself so you don't let anyone else use it. The same concept. In my apartment though, there was no assigned parking spaces, there was only a car limit for each unit, which I believe was 3 cars per household. My apartment was on the 3rd floor and most of the time the parking up front seemed to be pretty packed. There was a couple of times where there was a free space in between 2 cars, but I didn't want to chance it. I was paranoid of scratching my brand new car. Because of this, I usually parked pretty far away, or even on the side of the unit where not as many people wanted to park because they would have to walk down the sidewalk to get to the stairs. I did not really mind parking a little while away, and my kids were always with me, so if they ever need to go to the car for something, I was with them. Well, one day after I picked up my boys from school, I was incredibly surprised to find that most of the parking spaces up front were empty. I was pretty tired from the work week since it was Friday, so honestly, I was excited to park without any cars around me. I know. It sounds silly, but I'm being honest. The next morning, Saturday morning, I took my boys to go grocery shopping and also to get them both some new shoes. When we were leaving, I noticed that my neighbor's car was parked next to mine and it had a huge scratch and dent on the driver's door. It actually looked like someone had taken a baseball bat and smashed the door or something. The damage was that noticeable. I figured they got in a minor wreck or something and went about with my day. When we got home, we start unloading the groceries, which take a few trips. During this, my neighbor walks up to us and maybe she's going to say hi or something, but she starts asking one of my boys why there is a dent in her car door. My son obviously does not answer, as he does not know her. I was pretty big on tutoring my boys about not talking to strangers, and I'm glad I did. I ask my neighbor if there is something I can help her with, which does not go very well at all. Neighbor immediately starts saying how she thinks one of my kids scratched her car. I let her know that that was impossible because both of my kids have been out with me all morning. And we were just getting out of our car when she stopped us and I never heard a door hit her car or anything. Neighbor: well, how do I know you did not let them hit it before you left this morning? Me: why would I do that? And I was guilty, why would I park up in the front? Neighbor: well, you guys are the only ones around, plus you were parked here this morning too. Maybe you did it last night. Me: lady, my kids did not do anything to your car. They are always with me and I can assure you that if I actually saw them hit your car, I would have told you. Neighbor: well, I don't know that. I don't know what kind of person you are. I even showed her at this point that with the way our cars were positioned when we opened the doors on our car, that they did not even reach hers. At this point, she was making no sense at all, so I decided to grab my kids' hands and start walking upstairs to the 3rd floor. Now her boyfriend comes out and starts asking her what is going on. Neighbor: she won't admit her kids hit our car. I know they did. They're the only ones around. Plus, I've seen them playing out in the streets and seen them almost hit other cars too. Neighbor's boyfriend: yes. We have totally seen them hit other cars. Me: so your wife just said she has seen them hit other cars and you say you have seen them hit other cars. It does not sound like it's adding up. At this point I want to go into my home, so I start walking upstairs again and the boyfriend tries to block me from entering the stairway. My kids are obviously scared by now and this guy is way too close for comfort, so I tell him he needs to move or else I'm calling the police. I ended up filing a police report anyways because I didn't want them to try and report that I hit their car when I know I didn't, nor did my kids. After this, every time I leave for work or come home and their car is parked next to mine, I take pictures and tag it with dates so that if they try to say anything, I can prove my innocence. Well, one morning they saw this and they didn't like it and started freaking out. They started saying how I was illegally recording their property without their consent and that they were going to call the police on me. I laughed because I'm fairly sure recording someone's property without their consent was not a real thing. Either way, they kept screaming on and on, so I was actually the one to call the police. I'm quite sure these people damaged their own car and were trying to find a cover-up for it to get an insurance claim. And guess what? I was right. The police officers came and they found the car they were looking for in a hit and run. And guess whose car it was? It was the neighbors. They had apparently pulled a hit and run and were trying to cover it up. Totally busted. Both my neighbors and her boyfriend end up getting arrested and the car ends up getting impounded. I have not had to deal with them in 5 months, it's been absolute heaven. And sorry, some of us are actually responsible when it comes to our cars. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you're also a car lover, then please let me know in the comments what kind of car you are driving. Many years ago, myself and two of my best friends decided to go for a day of mountain biking at Snowshoe in southern West Virginia. And I hope this is right, by the way, please correct me if I'm wrong with that. Now, this was way before the days of GPS, so we were kind of doing this by some half-assed directions and an old map, but the point is we got very lost. Sometime along the way, we ended up in this very tiny little town and we figured we would ask for directions. It was absolutely deserted. I'm talking not a single soul to be seen anywhere. We parked the truck and split up looking for anyone. Now, this was at around 9 to 10 AM, so not exactly the ass crack of dawn, mind you. We went into the post office, nobody. We went into the only bar in town, which was unlocked, unattended with music playing, but not a single soul present. We went business to business to business and walked the streets, and after about 25 minutes finally found one old guy who just seemed to appear out of nowhere in the middle of town walking alone. The first question we asked him was not even for directions. It was, "Where the hell is everyone?" To which he replied, "Well, I guess folks around here don't get up much till around noon." We asked him for directions to Snowshoe and he pointed to the road we came in on and said to go that way about 10 miles and make a right and we will find the interstate. We left quickly. We all had a very bad sense of unease about the whole thing. As we left, we were about 5 miles down the road and hit a lady dressed up in a state road uniform standing in the middle of a very long straightaway holding a stop sign. When we approached her, she turned the sign from slow to stop. We asked what was going on. She stated that there was road construction ahead. We told her of what just happened and she just kind of laughed and said those people in that town are kind of strange, but let it slide. So we actually started talking to her, waiting for a line of traffic to come by from the opposite direction. We actually ended up talking to her for about 45 minutes to an hour, just talking about stuff. Kind of got lost in the conversation. Not one single vehicle ever approached from the other direction or behind us. Eventually she said, "Well, I guess it is clear now and you all can go ahead," and slowly turned the sign from stop to slow and motioned for us to go ahead. We went straight ahead, the only direction you could possibly go for the next 30 some odd miles, and did not see any signs of construction, state road workers or maintenance going on at all. She had no vehicle. We figured she was a flag woman dropped off by some crew up ahead. After the encounter with the town and this woman, we had enough and called it quits. We turned on the interstate as soon as we found it and headed north and home. Every single one of us still remembers this whole encounter in vivid detail to this day. I asked my friend about it actually about 3 months ago at this wedding and it still freaks him out to no end. And the next one is another story from the same Ask Reddit thread. This took place when I was 13. No one in my family will acknowledge it happened. The only ones who would cave to my "but great-grandpa" have unfortunately passed away. No one will give me the time of day about it. My family has a cabin in Cook's Forest, Clarion, PA. Cabin was built by my great-granddad and has expanded a bit over the years, but has a little nice nook at the bottom of a long dirt road off the main road and down a hill. There are a few other properties around, but most are up and off on the dirt road. Only one is down the hill and only halfway at that. It's not modern by any means, no internet cell service, the TV still has dials you have to twist to get to watch a DVD. It's very rustic and I love it. The property halfway down the hill is visible from any part at the front of our cabin, which is where the kitchen window, parking, porch and fire pit are. For as long as anyone can remember, it's been this abandoned lot that had what was once a cabin with a concrete basement. The cabin was built on a hill, so half the basement stuck out from the hill, but the remaining part was crumbling. It also was at the fork where we would ride our ATVs to get to the fire break, so even though it could have been creepy, it was a very common and familiar sight. Until one Memorial Day, which is when we opened the cabin after the winter, and a large part of our family would go to the cabin for the long weekend to spend time together. Everyone would usually get there through the early evening and then all come together for my great-granddad's dinosaur pancakes for breakfast, the highlight of my single-digit to preteen years. So I wake up expecting to smell pancakes and hear chatter from the older members of my family down in the kitchen, but nothing. I assume I've gotten up too early and go downstairs to use the bathroom and then go back to sleep. Looking back, the whole upstairs was just mattresses with an aisle between them. I should have noticed that most beds were empty. I get downstairs and see all the adults outside, and I go out to say good morning and demand my T-Rex pancakes. I walk out and see all my family adults in a kind of semi-circle facing an older man and a woman I did not recognize. I assume this is some adult situation, so I go back inside to wake up my cousins, but not before looking at the clock on the microwave and seeing that it is about 3 p.m. Now, I love the cabin. I would doodle the cabin itself, four-wheelers and the area around it for months leading up to Memorial Day weekend. I was usually up really early because I was so damn excited to just be there. Sleeping until 3 p.m. was not in any way normal. I wake up my cousins, and by the time they all mosey downstairs, the adults are all back inside. Everyone is pretty silent, but then great-grandpa fires up the stove and gets us kids excited for dino cakes, so all seems normal. I was there with one of my aunts and my uncle, no parents, and my aunt is pretty close in age to me and was for sure the cool aunt. So when I saw her pale as a sheet, I went to ask what is wrong. She took me outside and pointed at the aforementioned abandoned and crumbling property. In its place was a sprawling cabin mansion, parking area full of SUVs and the coolest looking four-wheelers my 13-year-old self had ever seen. Aunt tells me that the owners had come to say hi, the couple I saw earlier, and invited us over to hang out with their nieces and nephews as they were having a Memorial Day get-together just like us. Me having zero thoughts besides awesome four-wheelers, almost ran to the house, but my aunt caught me and rather forcefully reminded me of my dino cakes. I conceded and ran back inside to an atmosphere so thick with tension that even my undeveloped brain, thanks Dr. Mom, could detect it. The oldest of the adults were acting normal and playing around with us kids, but something was very off. I finally asked what was up, and my aunt bonked me in the head and asked if I had seen that massive cabin mansion last night, last year, and the year before. We had come to the cabin every few weeks until December. Did I see any construction? Well, no, but they invited us over, and they have cool four-wheelers, Aunt Beth, come on. A resounding no from multiple family members made my emotional girl self almost flee and cry until my grandpa, a hulk of a man, got down to my level and explained that he felt there was something weird going on. He said the couple did not act right. I assumed that meant they were rude and that we should just keep to ourselves this weekend. I agreed and we went about our day, all adults keeping us occupied with activities either inside or behind the cabin. We get ready for bed when I see my great-granddad, World War II vet, who had the only bedroom on the first floor, loading 3 shotguns, handing one off to my grampy and the other to my uncle/cool aunt's husband. To my shock and awe, my Grammy pulls out a bedazzled Glock from her purse. I go to bed with images of my little Grammy taking down a bunch of bad guys with her shiny pistol. I wake up the next day to the smell of pancakes and the sound of adults chatting downstairs. I am sad because today is when we have to pack and leave, but things seem back to normal, so I am very glad. I run downstairs, note that the clock says 7:30, but ignore the weirdness and sit in front of a plate of dino cakes that I dig into while asking my aunt what time we have to leave. Leave? We don't leave until tomorrow. Wait, what day is it? It's Saturday. We just got here last night. I noticed just a bit of doubt in my aunt's eyes that I know something is up. And I run outside. The abandoned lot is back to its decrepit state. I resolve to brush it off and enjoy my ATV riding and forget about everything pretty quickly. It was not until I got back to school and was called to the main office where they asked why I was not at school on Monday. I told them that today was Monday, what are they talking about? But nope, it is Tuesday and my absence was unexplained despite several calls. I skipped school frequently, to my parents divorced, neither of which were at the cabin. So either my family played the trick of all tricks on me, or I am living in an alternate universe where I can sleep into the afternoon. Like I said, no one will even remotely entertain a conversation about this incident, so I am left telling my fellow Redditors about my family's conspiracy against me.